Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Mo Show Live. I'm Morris Lilienthal. Really excited about today's guest, a very dynamic and guest who is really doing great things in our community, and really excited to share his message and the message of our city with you. Many of you know that we're based here in Huntsville, Alabama. My law firm is proud to have had its roots here since 1937. We live in a great community, and we've got great people that live in our community. We have a thriving economy. We have a lot of industry moving here, and we've got our challenges just like any other city. But one of the reasons that we have a great city, among many reasons, is great local leadership. And we've got one of our great local leaders here today, Huntsville City Councilman Devyn Keith. And before I formally introduce the councilman, let me tell you, for those watching around the country that may not be as familiar with where we are in Huntsville, we are basically equidistance between Nashville and Birmingham. We're about an hour and a half south of Nashville, hour and a half north of Birmingham. We've got about 193,000 people in the city limits, I think, of Huntsville, give or take. We were just ranked by U.S. News and World Report the #7 best place to live in the United States. And we've got a thriving science and technology community. We have a lot of defense and military jobs here based upon Redstone Arsenal, and we're also the home of Marshall Space Flight Center for NASA. But folks, I'm real excited and want to jump right into it and introduce our guest. Our guest today is Huntsville City Councilman Devyn Keith. Devyn is a native of Huntsville. He's a graduate of Sparkman High School. And I'm not saying anything, folks, but I'm just saying that their mascot's the Senators. So I don't know where he's heading with. I'm not sure where he's heading with his political career.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
That may be some foreshadowing. So he's also a graduate of Samford University. I'm also a graduate. That's where I got my law degree, Devyn.
There we go. Go Dogs, man.
That's right. I know you played sports down there. And at Samford, he founded a nonprofit called Brothers of One Voice, and their mission was educating, empowering, and advocating for youth who have aged out of the system. He's got his master's in public administration from Boston University. And in November of 2016, Devyn was the youngest elected city official ever in the history of the city of Huntsville. Devyn, thank you so much. I know you got a lot on your plate.
Thank you.
You got a lot going on, but thank you and welcome so much.
Well, what I want to say is a blessing. And let me go ahead and tell everybody, this was not the plan for my life. I went up to Boston. I had a couple of plans that were going according to plan. I was going to make a lot of money, drive a nice car, travel the world, and maybe a couple of girlfriends or two along the way. So I say I have fallen into politics, or maybe politics has fallen onto me. So,
well, we're very fortunate to have great, energetic young leader like yourself in our city. I think people like you are making a difference. That you're hearing, you're willing to try new things, listen to people, take the education and things that you've got with your background. I know you've done a lot of study when you're at Boston U with data and analytics, and taking that foundation and your foundation for civic engagement and moving the city forward and moving your district forward. So I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about that. Folks, if you're watching the show live, I want to remind you, want to say hello. If you want to give a shout out, you've got a question for Councilman Keith, and please let us know. I'm going to be watching the feed over here on the other screen, and we'll be glad to chime in. If you just want to give a shout out and tell us you're watching, please do so. And if you're watching a recorded show afterwards, leave a question. We'll monitor this, and if you got questions, Devyn can get back to you, or we can put information there that may answer your question. So, the first question I've got, I was thinking about speaking to you today was, I'm not sure, you're 29, 30 years old. How old are you now, sir?
I'm 29 going on 40.
Okay.
I've got 5 gray hairs. I counted this morning. I sort of have a ritual now of counting my gray hairs. So they've come in the past 6 months. I'm getting old.
Well, wait till you have kids. They grow faster than that.
Yeah. Well, and that's a funny point. I'm now a foster parent for I've been about 4 months, and you don't have teenagers, man. They eat. You got a house and home, and they always forget their keys everywhere. So.
Well, that's so awesome that you're doing that amongst everything else. That just shows your heart and your passion for helping others, and that's really awesome. But I want to know, is somebody, I guess, I don't know if you like the term millennial or not, you hear it all the time, but tell us about, where did your passion for civic engagement, for giving back, and for government come from, Devyn?
And I guess I can sort of really, I want to be as poignant as possible on that perspective. We could talk all day, but really,
sure.
I sort of see it in a lot of ways that we have this ability, especially us young folks, the idea or notion that I'm young, most of our civic leaders, if you go back in time, even to the formation of the Constitution, a lot of those individuals were young. The pictures that we see of the Thomas Jeffersons with the wigs and stuff, that was not what they looked like when they were involved in politics. And my idea, I used to sort of coin it in that sense, is that I was a political entrepreneur, looking for opportunities to really shorten the distance between problem and solution. And the beauty of that was, in a lot of ways, you can make a lot of money. That's called lobbying. But in between problem and solution is the word innovation. And there were issues, as you spoke about Brothers in One Voice, where we had the largest pipeline to prison was not individuals who did not finish high school, but rather individuals of a certain age range, of a certain race, who were either in the system for more than 3 years or had aged out of the system without any transitional living program. So what you saw in the state of Alabama between 2007 to about 2010 or 11, where we were releasing kids as wards of states from group home therapy, and within 6 months they were either arrested or they had found themselves in some sense of a detention center and so forth and so on. And I think that when you find the ability to say this is a problem, you find yourself not only advocating for change, but the importance with the pragmatism of really policy is, how do I fix it? And then what are those ripple effects? So though I never expected to be in politics, I think the identification of problems naturally makes people ask the question, how do you fix it? The beauty now is that I was a policy guy first. So I have to ask myself, how much does it cost? And what are the reverberating effects? And can we get it done in enough time to have enough credible evidence that it works?
Yeah. Well, having that background is immensely helpful. I mean, seeing the problem is only part of the solution. You've got to have the background and understanding of how can we address this problem? How do we afford to fix this problem? How do we implement the changes to do what is the best strategy for implementing those changes? Because sometimes, as you know more better than I do, a lot of the hoops and red tape that you have to jump through to get it, it's not just as easy as seeing the problem and coming up with a solution. Getting those to marry together, especially when you're dealing with government, I'm sure is very frustrating and is causing those gray hairs.
Absolutely. And I think a beauty of why civic government at the local level has a lot more potency that people really don't value. And you could see that in the elections where people don't turn out. The immediacy of local governance, especially in a nonpartisan system like Huntsville, allows 5 people, really 3, to decide immediate action on certain acute issues. So crime is a bipartisan issue. There isn't a person in the city who wants to live in a high crime area, including the people who live in the high crime areas. Infrastructure is a serious issue. There isn't a person, I don't care if they drive a bike or walk, who wants to walk through a pothole or drive over a pothole, from a Mercedes to a Mitsubishi. So you have to account for those. There's another bipartisan issue, which is quality of life. All of us want the opportunity to have greenways, sidewalks, streetscaping, clean streets, low homelessness, so that we feel a pride where we live. Well, you answer all those at the local level every budget cycle in October. You don't have to ask your party affiliate, the Speaker of the House. You don't have to ask any of the think tanks. You get to wake up every day, like this Thursday, and say, we believe this is an issue or an opportunity, let's invest.
Right. Well, and it's so true. And I think, having community involvement, having local leaders that are plugged in to the community and listening to the public is so important. And I want to talk to you about that in a little while, how you're doing that. But tell us a little bit about, maybe for people who are watching from afar and people maybe even in the area that don't know as much, a little bit about the city, the demographics of the city, and then maybe drill down on the demographics and how that's different in maybe your district from other parts of the city.
Absolutely. In the quick scope, let me tell you, Huntsville is the greatest city just this side of heaven. And we are competing to stay at the top in that round. We might be number 7 on some charts. To me, we're number 1. I was born and raised in about 4 streets in Northwest Huntsville. And my mother, bless me, she is an amazing woman who to this day works 2 jobs. But I experienced the beauty of Huntsville because I was introduced to a number of families who, more people probably changed my diaper than my mother did. So I have seen Huntsville from the rising ranks of support and community love and involvement. That being said, we have a lot of success that is contingent upon us, I guess you can say, parlaying what is naturally our success: Redstone Arsenal, location. We have ports. We have access to, like you said, major cities and thoroughfares right off 65. But also, we have done a wonderful job with an unemployment rate of 3.2 of slowly but surely investing in specific and key areas and amenities that allows individuals to who are either have to move into Huntsville for a redstone or for a job to consider Huntsville a place of I will raise my family. I know we talked earlier when you were down here from college opportunities to HBCUs in the city is very big, as well as you have an engineering university at UAH who's high class, bar none, and you have opportunities as well when it comes to community college. You have Drake, you have technical. So there are a lot of amenities that offer the beauty of Huntsville that go beyond the Rocket. But we have done a good job as well, I think, in what might have been the greatest economic boom or strategic boom because of Mayor Battle and his administration to really double down on some of the industrial diversity that was needed so that everybody can't work on the Arsenal. That means you can work at Toyota. That means that you can work in other places like Remington and still take care of your family and still live within the city. And then the final point of that is retail, offering opportunities that are regional destinations. I have not, done the numbers, but when I went out to Top Golf, I saw a lot of golf clubs more than I saw golf balls. That means that people were out there who probably never played golf, but they wanted to have the experience. And I think that is beautiful and is needed in a city like this. But as it gets specific to where I'm from, North Huntsville, there are two issues that led to where I am and how I got here. I wrote a dissertation paper that really looked at the correlation of the decrease in property values with the increase in crime and increase with unemployment rates. And that is not a new correlation. It's been seen across areas. The issue was that the correlations were subjective. We believed that this happened, but we didn't ask why. And the non-investment, what we saw in the private market, I believe in very efficient, very small governance, is that a lot of people had a subjective feel when they spend their money. It is not always metrics. It is sometimes a whim that people take a chance in certain areas. In other places, it's very quantitative. People believed that North Huntsville, one, was uninvested because of crime, which they have a great point. Last year we had 21 murders, 17 of those were specific to Northwest Huntsville and one zip code. But what we had not done at the civic level was ask, and that's that innovative point, why is it that of the 17, about 6 of those were specific to 3 streets? Why are those 6 murders were individuals between a certain age, and why were those individuals in that certain time all usually doing the same thing? And we had never looked at what I think government should do now is how do we strategically and efficiently use resources? Northwest Huntsville has, at one point, the greatest, I could smell it every time I say it. You see the Terry's Pizza, and when my grandma would say, don't touch that pizza till we get home, it felt like 45 minutes getting back to Masson Lake. But because of the infrastructure bill, the fact that at one point you had access, immediate access now with the overpass and bypass, those developments are not going to happen on North Parkway because there's no exits to get off. In the inverse, you look south of University, there's 6, 7, 8. You could take an exit to get off an exit, to get on an exit and exit again.
Right.
So what I found was Northwest Huntsville is ripe for its potential of reinvestment. We do not have any issue that is not being seen by a number of cities around. Whereas development breeds development. There are places that developers will say, this worked here. I'll give the example as Whole Foods on Governors. Eventually across the street, they're now redeveloping another plaza. Government has incentivized that by building garages, building roads and access points. What you will have to have so that you can change, again, the social narrative is a immediate, acute, very persistent investment to do 2 things. Decrease the negative statistics. So anytime I can come back and say last year we had 21 murders, this year we only have 15. That changes the social stereotype. That changes the social narrative that has a variable in everybody's mind. And then the other thing is invest so that developers start the conversation and say, there's an opportunity here that I didn't originally think was there. That's where that word gentrification comes in, but I would rather have to deal with that when it faces me than not have the option to deal with it at all. So yeah. Northwest Huntsville is a beautiful place full of beautiful people. It's a very diverse district. It's about 60, 35, and 5. And because of my living situation, if I go back in time, I tell myself to shut up. But living in places where maybe it doesn't get as much attention and people are not as known, I have seen the diversity of Huntsville where, Mr. Jose is next to Mrs. Olga, who is next. So I live next to a Hispanic, in between a German, and on the very end, a lady from Brazil. And that has a value that is the Huntsville that I see and I know. So Huntsville is an amazing city, and we have been number one ever since the day I entered this world. But we have opportunities that we must right now strike while the iron is hot in an efficient manner so that we increase the idea that, and I don't think people say it enough, if you were to offer somebody a place to live in Huntsville and it came down to they said, you tell me right now where I should go and have a high quality of life and I will go there, you should not have to weigh 1 through 5 of the districts. You should have the ability to say, anywhere you go, you will have a nice life in the city of Huntsville.
Yeah, and I love that point. And that's one of the things I love about our community is the diversity. We have so many people that are in our community from different backgrounds, different cultures that have came here for, whether it's back in the 50s with Warner von Braun, with a lot of German immigrants and a lot of people from Asian countries that are moving here for NASA and other things, but other fields and industries as well. And I think we need to look at that diversity as a positive and to take that. And I agree with you. And, I was talk with some other local leaders. I was talking with Robbie Parker. We were talking about the schools in Madison. And he, one of the things that he was talking about that applies to you, which exactly what you said was, we don't want to have a bad school. We don't want to have that school that you don't want to attend. The same way in Huntsville, we don't want to have that district that you don't want to live in. We want the entirety of Huntsville to be number one. And that's what street you're on, what district you're in. And I think you'd agree with me that when every district is at the top of the level and the top shelf and everybody wants to, it's better for the entire city. The economy is going to get even better. The opportunities for industry is going to get better. The quality of life is going to get better. The retail is going to get better. And I'm really excited to hear what you've got going on in your district so we can help the people in that district, which will then turn help the entire city.
And I think you said it best, that helping your neighbor doesn't necessarily mean the person that lives on your street, the people who share the notion that they are Huntsvillians just like you. And the beauty of some of the investments that I originally, I feel like I've been in office like 10 years, but it's been 1 year. So I've just finished my first cup of coffee in office, I guess you could say. But the investments that we originally started on, and we probably should have never even won this race, to be honest with you. I was walking door to door with like a notepad and just writing my name. We had no money. And I told people it is cheaper, and you can look it up, for the city to do aid to construction and reinvestment in North Huntsville, and you get more ROI on some of the investment projects. Now, that does not mean that North Huntsville is any different than some of the places off of Drake in Cleans District or in South Huntsville. But I am saying that until we really get a hold on potential caveats of success, you cannot stifle social narratives. If you read people don't read the comments, but those are people who potentially have expressed what a large amount of the constituent base might feel. And one of the tough things to do, if I was to offer you $1 million home, I know you have $1 million home, but let's say I offered you another $1 million home. And I said, you can do whatever you want with it, 8 bedrooms, 6.5 baths, man cave, you would get excited. Now, if I said you could only live in the south side of Chicago, your mind's changed a little bit. You're thinking about that. You're thinking about your family. You're thinking about your kids, what school's going to be there. Though that part in the south side of Chicago might be beautiful, pristine, and full of the social narrative has affected your decision making. And we're on the cusp where if you do that with North Huntsville, digging out of it is nearly impossible. It's North Memphis, east side of Atlanta, south side of Chicago, and Birmingham has a number of those metrics. Huntsville has to be very delicate with the next 5 to 10 years where we parlay our success. We must continue on in what the administration has put forward, to be very strategic in diminishing the negative metrics.
Yeah, well, I think that's great. And I really thought it was very pointed that you said about talking about investment, that your investment dollar in an area that is thriving and thirsting for investment in retail and stuff goes a much longer way than taking an area, in an area that's already booming. And it's really going to end up yielding that much more when that area starts thriving. Talk to us a little bit about some of that. I was reading, getting ready for today's show, about some really cool projects and things that you've been doing in your district and doing. And I mentioned to you before we went on, one of the hot topics or discussions that we've had, and this goes back into the social narrative that you were talking about in part of your district about, community policing and people, the relations between police departments and a lot of people in higher crime areas. And to be truthful, it's been problems and there've been issues in a lot of cities in the U.S. in the last couple of years. But I know that you've tried to research that and come up with an innovative way out in the Glen Park community to try to address that. And I'd be interested to let you share that with our viewers as to what you're doing out there.
Absolutely. And simply put, it is much, beyond that. When we go back to smart policing that happened last March, I was detained by police. They were wonderful. Huntsville Police Department is bar none the best this side of heaven as well. And they have been very open to the idea that, it's like this word we don't want to use in government. It's called innovation. Whereas, you have an opportunity to increase size by adding on police, but that police costs something. And we were having, let's just take Barber Drive and Terry Heights, a number of murders, a number of shootings. We were having a huge amount of call to service. Well, that conversation started, and I had a big barbecue and talked to people, and they were like, we don't want to tell, we don't want to have any problems. I said, what if I was to put a camera out here? Now, per any research that you find, the minimal change in the decrease in call to services within a mile radius of camera services, 24/7, all day, police, all shown, signage and everything, is about 22%. So that grew the conversation where injecting police officers does two things. You increase community awareness to people that they can feel comfortable with. And in the inverse, you decrease the comfort of crime. And that's something we've never talked about in the new metro city, that crime is specific to location and a number of different variables. Crime is not just something that is sporadic. If you are selling drugs, you go where you think the least amount of awareness to that is. And
Right.
The beauty of that is that in a place like Glen Park, who has a large amount of call to service, if you were to take what we would call a hotspot or a spotlight, we haven't really coined the term, and you were to put a home there. We've seen it in other places around the city where 24/7 there's a cop car or some sense of a rotation on 310s. You also have, and it's just not limited, you would have community development out of there certain days of the week. But you would have somebody that would also bring during the cadet class, and I think it's very important, you want to introduce these cadets to communities that they will probably get called to before they put the badge on, not after. Because again, as much as they have social narratives, we have implicit biases as well as citizens. And introducing that, what we would call a spotlight home, then tells that neighborhood that our eye is on this neighborhood. And if you hotspot it, and if you add cameras, and if you add patrol, and if you throw some barbecues in there and some free hot dogs, what you will find is the comfort of crime changes. The roaches scatter when the lights come on. So we had about 4 or 5 neighborhoods that we identified. This is where crime is just too comfortable. And we are injecting ourselves in Terry Heights and Meadow Hills and places that I'm living now to where the decrease has happened. And I got an email probably a month ago from a courtesy officer at Glen Park, and he said, I don't know what to tell you, but this is the least amount of work I've ever had to do. Things have changed. That doesn't mean that we can predict crime. That doesn't mean that we're going to be perfect. Crime will happen. But if you, again, decrease the negative metrics and increase it through innovation, very cheap, you have changed the quality of life for a whole community. And again, the better District 1 is, the better Huntsville is.
That's right. That's right. Hey, folks, if you're just tuning in, we're welcome to the Mo Show Live. We're speaking with Huntsville City Councilman Devyn Keith about what makes Huntsville a great city, what the great and exciting things going on in his district and issues facing his district, and how we're going to be making changes in our city to make our city continue to make our city the best.
There you go.
To make it best out of heaven. Devyn, I was recently speaking, it's pretty interesting. I was recently speaking with a police officer out in California who's a friend of mine on a past show. And one of the things he talks about doing is building the community relations through using social media. The local police department's doing that. And that his city, which is about 60,000 residents, has really done a good job of engaging with the community, not only out on patrol and doing, but with social media and doing that. A lot of times now they're finding that people are more engaged with the citizens and the police, and the interaction is such that they're feel more of an open conversation, an open window, and open dialogue. And I'm sure that's what we're trying to foster with a lot of more boots on the ground there in these communities, so people, they feel comfortable that it's not somebody they fear or somebody they don't have a relationship with. It they build, as I like to say a lot of times, they get to know them, they get to like them,
Absolutely.
and they trust them. And once they trust them, then if they know something, they'll say something.
And that's the truth. I mean, me and you could probably agree as gentlemen, and a woman, might agree when it comes to her nail salon technician. If I could help it, if I could fly my barber everywhere around the world, I would, because he just knows my head. It's not the best head in the world. I don't have the best head of hair, but the comfort I have that my barber is going to cut it exactly how I like it allows me to pay him and even give him a tip, even though he talks too much sometimes. I'm telling him I said that. I say that to say you can tailor certain parts of the police department, much like you tailor any other department, to let the community know at this point in this aspect, we understand and hear you. That does not argue perfection, but I give the best example. Before we got to office, there was no, District 1 was the first to have a Facebook. District 1 was the first to go live at their town halls. District 1 was the first to give out pamphlets with numbers. I think I'm the first to now put everything in Spanish because I have a Spanish community who comes to my town halls and struggles to understand what I'm trying to say. And it's not, in a sense, to do anything more but increase the awareness. If you get 10 people and they all walk away confused, there'll be 10 different stories told. If you give 10 pamphlets and they all say the same thing, it's tough to walk away with a different side of the story. And the police department has done a wonderful job of understanding the community who probably needs you the most. You're going to be there. It's a community full of great people, but you're going to be there at the worst point in their lives. They're calling you because something has gone wrong. So for them to call somebody in a bad time, wouldn't it be better if they call somebody they really believed in and that they really knew? And I believe that's the same way for us. When I call my doctor, I might have a cold, but it feels like I have pneumonia. But I believe he's going to probably tell me the same thing he did last time, but knowing that I trust him, trust his perspective, I'm going to make sure I see my doctor. And other departments can be done that same way, but social media, awareness, and information, injecting them at a very minimal cost. Remember, this is nothing, this Facebook cost us nothing, and it has increased. I originally started with 46 people in my first town hall. The last town hall, same stuff, same topics, 116. So we are increasing the awareness in the community that at one point felt forgotten.
Yeah. Well, and especially now, if you're listening to the congressional debates in the government, you're hearing a lot of bad things about Facebook, and there's some concerns and privacy issues, a lot of things going on with social media. But the power of social media for good, I want to make sure people understand that, and that allows us to have our dialogue today. But more important to that, as one of the questions I wanted to ask you right before we get to wrap up, and you've kind of already hit on it, which is how are you able to use social media to engage with your constituents, to spread your message, and to get feedback from them? And it sounds like you're already doing that through sharing messages on Facebook, broadcasting live so people can interact and get feedback. And that allows people that may not have access or transportation to get there to be engaged and locked in, and people that maybe want to tune in, they don't have time at that particular time because of work or other commitments to do it. But I think that's really great that you are using this platform of social media to reach out to the people in District 1 and Huntsville at large to get their feedback, and so you can do a better job as representing them and their interests.
Yeah, and I think an important thing is, as politicians, we need to do a more accountable job of trying to take away the excuses of people as well. Some people call me councilman, some people call me janitor because all I do is clean up messes, and other people call me a waste of time. But the one thing I don't want anybody to say is that he didn't try and get me that information. And I thought it was beautiful. One time a lady was complaining about a road. I wasn't tagged in the post. And then somebody else copied the link from the District 1 page and put it there and said, he's addressed this. This is the time frame. You should add the page. So they become central hubs of information to where I don't have to respond to everybody. And I'll say very quickly, the importance a lot of times of city council members is not necessarily just be a conduit between the city and, basically administration and city hall, but also to find a way to make it tangible and understood. Sometimes city hall will put out information that isn't necessarily readily understood, so you have to chew it up a little bit. And for me, a younger base likes to get that in bullet points, very quick, or a video right from social media. And then an older constituent base, I'm sorry, my grandmother says, seasoned constituent base wants to have the town hall They want to touch you, feel you, yell at you, be arguing, and call you on the phone.
Yeah, well, that's something that I believe in, and certainly there's a need. There's a need for the details. The details are important, but I think sometimes we get lost in the weeds, and we need in the forest. Sometimes we need to give a big view, picture view, and certainly that's something that I try to do in my profession, is to try to explain things in plain English to people so they understand what's going on. And I know that's important to you with your constituents and at large, to explain to them what's going on. These are the issues. I don't want to speak political lingo to you. Let me break it down and tell you what the issues are and how we need to address them.
And I want to say that to you. I'm sorry, I don't want to inject, but
No, go ahead.
You talked about the national level. We are having on both ends, even in the middle sometimes, the issue with the idea of fake news. And the beauty is right now, you are asking very important, pertinent questions. The constituent base that is following along can hear from the person. It is not conjured up by a media team. You play just as important a role as CNN and Fox. And I'm very thankful that people take it so serious. I looked at the people who, I'm following a long list of people to get that information, because people can always come back to this video, go to whatever point in time, and see he referenced that face to face with somebody.
Yeah, well, and I think it is, and I think it's a way for you to be held accountable, and I think it's a way for people can be informed through methods like this. The last big topic I want to hit on, because I certainly want to be mindful of your time, sir, is talk to me about something that I'm near and dear and passionate about, and that I know I'm sure you are. I just know you are. Is the public education system. Yeah. As a product of public education, my wife, this is her 18th year teaching in the public schools in Alabama, and so yeah, no, I can. She's definitely the stoked person in our family. But seriously, tell me what the importance of having a strong foundation for public education is in our city and in your district, and why is that so important to keep our city on the upward trajectory?
I tell people all the time, if you only care about public education, if your kid's in the school system, you don't get the importance of public education. You definitely don't get the importance of city development around certain things. Early on, I mentioned the HBCUs and the universities. The location of a successful local school system from elementary K through 12 not only increases property value, but reinvestment dollars, and long term creates what we know to be successful neighborhoods and communities. And as a son, grandson, aunt, was a teacher, everything of Huntsville City School System, I can't explain to you now in my district that you want to have a comfort when people are moving in, as we talk about bringing the next BRAC, to say what I said earlier. No matter where your son goes to school, no matter where you decide to live, I am with confidence telling you I believe they would get the best education available in Huntsville and the best opportunity and quality of life. Now, the issue that is that you can't let the people who just have kids care. The community has to care about the success, no matter if your kids are in the school system, in a private school system, or have graduated, because that affects your city. And your city then affects how you live. And you don't want failing schools. You don't want schools that have to shut down. And you don't want to have any of their lack of success of the age gap. The age that goes from K to 12. So I absolutely believe in it. I actually work with a nonprofit called Cap and Gown, who does a wonderful job of getting ACT prep for those individuals. And I am the product of people who spend a little extra time. And I encourage people all the time to ask yourself, ask your politicians, when you do go and you get involved in the voting process, what is our potential success market? There is no school system who's at the top who says that we're content. And that's an important notion. There is no school system who is doing education at the level they want to. Every year, a school system says, what can we do better? And if you think that there's nothing you can do to help that, you have totally missed what it is to be a part of a community. Everybody can do something, whether that is donations, whether that is working with teachers, volunteering. Everybody can do something to uplift the school system, because no school system is content until every student has every perfect grade, and that's never going to happen. So I agree totally. I am the product of a lot of unpaid overtime from people who, pushed me through the books, drugged me through the hallways, but it paid off. And I am blessed. I can't explain how blessed I am that eventually when it stuck, and I have found myself here because of that.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to thank a few people that have joined in and tuned in and liked the videos for Mitch Jackson out in California, Yadi Martino down in Florida, Jennifer Goff, Jeffrey Middleton, Natasha Jennings, John Allen, who you may know with the Committee of 100.
Oh man, Big
Yeah,
John. He knows.
John,
He
John,
definitely knows this stuff.
he does. John and our friends that were in Rotary together, Lanisa Lanier and Roger Purnell. Thank you guys for tuning in. You know, what I would tell you if you're watching it is, I'm in the school system probably at least once every 2 weeks, usually once a week sometimes. If you want to get involved, go out and do. If you're retired and you want to get involved, and again, as Councilman said, get involved. There are elementary schools that would love to have you come read or work with students that need some extra attention that maybe they don't have the resources for age or something to do. There are a lot of school systems, middle school and high school kids that would love to have you to have mentors, or if you're retired and you have a specialty or profession, that they would love to have you come and speak or do a presentation, give feedback on maybe career stuff. So there are people that are thirsting for that involvement, and I really want to encourage you to do it, because I can tell you, every time I go back and I read to my son's second grade class, I have a funny story and I get so much fun out of it. My heart fills up with pride every time I walk out of the classroom, and it's well worth the time away from work, and it's kind of a breath of fresh air actually take away from the office to go do that. So I really want to encourage people to do that. Last but not least, I guess I would ask you, are there any projects, if somebody wants to get involved in District 1, if there are people out there that want to get involved, are there anything right now that you've got going on that you would say, hey, these are the 2 or 3 needs that we have, or the projects that we're looking to get some help with, as we wrap up? What are some things you would ask people to help with?
Well, I'll say I'm in the Johnny Appleseed phase right now. I'm just planting seeds around District 1. I promise they're going to grow. I just need the nutrients from private and public. We have Johnson that's getting off the ground. Been so blessed by that. But I guess I'll say it this way, because the people ask me all the time. I mean, we do have the North Side cleanup on this Saturday that will be at Jemison, and it'll start at 8, and we'll just go and cut grass and clean up North Huntsville. But I'll say this because I don't get the opportunity to say at this constituent base. The content, the success, the comfort you have in your community, everybody wants. There's nothing that anybody wants more than to live in a place where they feel safe. They feel that their dollars are increasing the equity. They feel that their government is adhering to their issues. And they feel that the potential of their family to live in that area, if it was for eons, would be the exact same thing in the highest quality. The only way that happens is not just caring about your street. You have to prod your local officials to care about the city in equity, not just equality. And we have the potential to have the greatest city in Alabama, bar none. But we have to be very strategic, and as well as adhere to a wider version of the neighborhood notion, that caring about our neighbor does not mean I have to live next to them or even in the same neighborhood, but rather that Huntsville, if not all 5 districts doing the best that they can, is not the optimal or the highest level of Huntsville that we can have. And that is a process. It does not happen overnight. But make sure that you get involved with holding local officials in education and the city government to the highest standard for all of Huntsville.
Yeah, well said. And we can't leave anybody behind, because if we leave those people behind, we can't move forward together. And we can only move forward if we move forward together. Folks, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Our guest today has been Huntsville City Councilman Devyn Keith. Devyn, if people want to get in touch with you, if they've got questions or feedback about the city government or your district, how can they catch up with you?
Absolutely. So we have a District 1 page, Huntsville City, and then you type in District 1 and it'll pop up. I think they took my ugly mug down, but it should say D1 on it. You can also just tag me in this post right here. This would be wonderful. I answer those questions. I have a wonderful staff who really gets back. If you're asking me to fix a pothole, just give me some time. We'll get into that season. But I promise you I am good in my responses, especially if you email. And if you just want to sit down, I got a couple of chairs in my office, and, you and John, if we talk city government, I can talk until I'm blue in the face. So all of the platforms, Twitter, Instagram, us young folks have used them all. But I'm still old school, and you can call my phone as well. So.
Okay. Well, folks, what we'll do once we wrap up the show here this afternoon, I'll go back in. I'll put a link in the video comments to the City One page. You can find more information about the city, District 1 there. I'll put the city's website in there. And then I'll also put the handles, I think maybe that's the right term, Devyn. I'm getting old. And so we'll put all his social media handles if you want to reach out and follow Devyn on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Great information that he's sharing and doing about what's going on in the community and how you can get involved and how you can give feedback. Devyn, thank you so much for your service to the community, and thank you for your time today. Hope everybody has a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.